changed, as the facts have changed, as these threats have changed? And does it suggest that this is a very dynamic situation where is the president engaged in approving new plans on a frequent basis, or is this something that is part of a ready playbook that would already be at the disposal of the Department of Defense, or is this something that's being retooled in real time?
There are elements that are consistent and elements that are dynamic. And what I mean by that is, from the very beginning, we've known the broad categories of forms of escalation that Russia could conceivably undertake. We've known the broad categories of contingencies that we might face, our allies might face, and Ukraine might face. But of course, as time goes on and circumstances change on the battlefield and broader diplomatic circumstances change, and as we gather new intelligence, we can refine the contingency planning within those broad categories to be more specific about different scenarios. And so over time, the president gets updates on the intelligence, updates on the likelihood or lack of likelihood of different circumstances, and refinements in the planning that's taking place across every element of our government, including the Defense Department, the intelligence community, the State Department, USAID, the Department of Energy, the Department of Transportation. We have people, experts from across our government working on a range of contingencies. And the president is in regular touch with his National Security Council principals to get updates on this and to give direction about how to continue to refine and sharpen these plans. The other thing that's happened is you've seen this steady stream of engagements President Biden has had with foreign counterparts, particularly in NATO, the G7, the European Union. That has been an opportunity to engage on different scenarios and to make sure that the leaders of these countries are directing their teams to coordinate together so that we can have a common playbook for how we respond in different circumstances. That's been a very important planning function that's almost unprecedented in the intensity and frequency of engagement at the leader level in a circumstance like this. Yeah.
Jake, I wanted to ask you about the sanctions. I know we've had batches of sanctions rolled out for the last, say, 7 months, and I wanted you to help us understand what makes you all confident that these latest sanctions would deter or change Putin's behavior when thus far we have not seen his behavior change.
Well, so first, one of the key elements of our sanctions strategy has been to reduce the capacity of the Russian military machine to regenerate its ability to threaten Ukraine. And we think we have had an impact on that, denying inputs to...
Many of you guys are curious. You're like, Steve, what happened? Why'd you lose power, Steve? Well, I have to say, to be honest, I logged into Pure Truth Coffee to see how many people were on the website, and there wasn't any. And it crashed. And it was like the Pure Truth website, people were like, no, nobody's buying anything. We're going to starve. No, I'm just kidding. We had a little fluctuation in internet. It's back, though. You're welcome.
To the weapons of war that Putin wants to manufacture and place on the battlefield. Second, we have wanted to undermine Russia's major sectors in technology, in industry, and, of course, in defense, so that its capacity to project power, threaten and coerce its neighbors, and wage wars of aggression is reduced over time. And we think that there is demonstrable progress on that front as well. Third, we want to send a clear message to the rest of the world that those companies, those individuals, and those countries that are going to stand beside Russia on this issue of illegal annexation, they will subject themselves to sanctions, and we do believe that that will have a considerable deterrent effect and have seen that in other circumstances. So for all of these reasons, we feel that the sanctions element of our strategy, the economic pressure that we are placing on Russia, and the denial of their ability to gather what they need to be able to regenerate their war machine, this has been a critical element to how we have prosecuted our strategy so far, and the impacts of it will continue to be felt month on month as we go forward and put us in a stronger position and Russia in a more disadvantaged position as this unfolds.
One follow on annexation. Can I just ask real quick on sort of the broader view of U.S. policy on annexation? Is it U.S. policy that any land gained by defensive or offensive war cannot be legally annexed?
It is the U.S. policy that the the attempt to annex at the point of a gun, to conquer territory, hold sham referenda, and then declare that territory your sovereign territory and not your neighbor's sovereign territory is as flagrant a violation of the UN Charter as possible. And this case is cut and dried. And it's for that reason that the UN Secretary General, who has been a careful voice, a neutral arbiter in multiple efforts on diplomacy between Russia and Ukraine over the last 6 months, came out with an absolutely unequivocal statement in this regard yesterday, and every word of it is something that the international community can collectively stand behind. Yeah.
Do Russia's actions give you any second thoughts about enacting the oil price cap policy, which essentially would encourage countries to buy Russian oil at a discount as opposed to a full-out global ban?
We're continuing down the road of negotiating alongside our G7 partners and working with countries who are purchasers or prospective purchasers of Russian oil, what the parameters in terms of a price cap would look like. We are not currently discussing a change in that policy, but rather continuing to find ways to both protect global energy markets and to deny revenues to Putin to feed his war machine. That is our fundamental objective. We believe this is the best method by which to achieve that objective, and we're not looking at a fundamental course correction on that at this time. Yeah.
Are you concerned there could be attacks on U.S. and Western infrastructure after the Nord Stream 1 incident?
We have to be concerned about the possibility of Russian action, Russian aggression against Western infrastructure, Western facilities. We have been concerned about that from the beginning of the war. We don't have any specific intelligence to share with you today on that, but that is the reason we do contingency planning. It is the reason that we send strong deterrent messages like the president today saying that the United States will defend every inch of NATO territory. And it's why the president said today that we've elevated our surveillance and monitoring of critical infrastructure in NATO territory in the event that it is put at risk, either physically or through cyber means or otherwise, and we will continue to do that.
There is a heightened concern about that possibility.
Well, before this war even began, I stood at this podium and said the possibility that we could see attacks in the United States, cyber attacks, or we could see attacks in Europe, whether physical or cyber, was real. It was real then, it remains real today, and what happened with Nord Stream 1 and 2 only reminds us that it is real. Yes.
Thank you. There is a clear nexus between Russia and Iran regarding the drone program that threatened Ukraine. How worried are you about this, and is there any way to stop it? And will you impose more sanction on Iran in the aftermath of the killing of Ms. Amini that you yourself condemned, and also they issued some sanctions, but do we expect more sanctions on the Iranian regime?
We continue to condemn the brutality and the repression against the brave citizens of Iran, the brave women of Iran who are simply marching for their rights and their dignity and their justice. And we continue to stand with them, not just in word, but in deed. We have issued several sanctions against Iranian entities for what they have done in this killing and brutality. And yes, we will continue to look for targets to impose sanctions in response to these brutal human rights violations. We have also issued sanctions with respect to the transfer of UAVs from Iran to Russia, and we are looking for additional methods to reduce Iran's capacity to be able to manufacture and then to sell these kinds of systems to Russia. We will continue to work on that. And the entire world should see that Russia, as it runs into problems being able to regenerate its own capabilities, has to turn to other countries to try to get a hold of whatever kind of precision munition it can, including Iranian UAVs, that this is a move Russia has been forced to make because it is being denied inputs. And we're going to try and cut off other countries who Russia would seek to go out and approach to get these kinds of weapons to be able to feed their war machine in Ukraine. Yeah.
Can I very quickly ask whether the profile of weapons and stuff being sent is changing, and in particular whether you have a view on whether tanks should be provided to Ukraine either by the U.S. or by other countries facilitated by the U.S.? And separately, while we have you, it's been about a year since that AUKUS deal was announced. I'm wondering if you have any update on the status of that. Are the Australians going to be buying American submarines, British submarines, or a combination of the two?
Actually, our leaders just recently put out a statement following the one-year anniversary of the AUKUS announcement, which took place last September just over a year ago, and we've made substantial progress over the course of the past year. We feel very good about the trilateral cooperation on the submarine program. We think that we have a good path forward. I'm not going to get into specifics on exactly what the nature of the platform will be. That some of the details of that need to continue to be worked out, but even more importantly, I need to protect the sensitivity of it. I will just say that our three countries are very much on the same page about the path forward, and there has been significant progress from concept 1 year ago to now the process of actually putting this in place. We also are pursuing a significant number of advanced capabilities through the AUKUS partnership in cyber, artificial intelligence, and other areas. We've seen significant progress on those as well, and there are certain areas where we are looking to bring in other partners as well as part of an open platform approach. With respect to tanks, we actually have facilitated the provision of tanks to Ukraine from some of our Eastern European partners who have provided the same type of Soviet-style tanks that the Ukrainian army trained on and is in possession of, and we will continue to do that. In terms of other weapon systems, what the president announced this week was a further provision of HIMARS, which we have provided before. We expect the next package will be a re-up of many of the capabilities that the Ukrainians have moved so effectively, and I don't have any announcements of new and additional capabilities beyond that.
What about NATO standard, Jake? What about NATO standard tanks, the Abrams tanks, Leopard tanks, like a higher, more modern tank? That's what is being sought by either the Ukrainians or advocates for it. Are you ruling that out, or is NATO ruling that out?
I'm not ruling anything out. I will say I don't have any announcement on a U.S. tank today, and in terms of German tanks, I would refer you to the Germans who are in their own consultations with the Ukrainians on that.
Thanks, Jake. Senators Blumenthal and Graham introduced legislation yesterday that would cut off U.S. military and economic aid to nations that recognize Putin's annexation of Ukraine. Does the White House support this proposal, or would it consider such a policy move like this?
So I haven't had a chance to read the legislation, and in these circumstances, the details end up mattering. But at a broad level, the basic proposition that we should be imposing economic costs on countries, individuals, and entities that are providing political and economic support to these annexations, not only do we agree with that, I just announced that from this podium today. We are going to do that ourselves under executive authority. And I want to issue a clear warning to those who would think about providing political and economic support to these annexed territories or to Russia's efforts to justify and defend the annexation. You can be subject to U.S. sanctions as a result of those activities. We look forward to working with Senators Graham and Blumenthal on an approach in the Congress that could be consistent with and help drive that forward.
Thank you, Jake. A couple of questions on Ukraine and then a follow-up on Iran, if I may. I'd like to get the administration's reaction on President Zelensky's statement saying that we are ready for a dialogue with Russia, but with another president of Russia. That's my first one. And then the second one is we understand that U.S. diplomats have been pressing Russia's allies to convince Putin to de-escalate. Can you be more specific about those kinds of overtures? In what ways does the administration believe that China and India can apply more pressure on Moscow to de-escalate, not go the nuclear route?
So on your second question, we think any country that believes in the principles of the UN Charter, and frankly, that should be every country that signed up to the UN Charter, should be taking on its measure of responsibility to communicate directly to the Kremlin that what it is doing is wrong, it is unjustified, and it must stop. And we are asking that of countries around the world. We'd like them to speak out publicly, and we would like them to convey things privately, diplomatically. With respect to the first question, which was, I'm sorry.
Zelensky saying that he's ready for a dialogue with Russia, but with another president of Russia.
President Zelensky has consistently said throughout this conflict that the war ultimately will end through diplomacy, and we have consistently backed him up in that. I would have to refer you to him on that precise statement and what he means by it, but what I will tell you is that we have had daily engagement with the president, his chief of staff, his foreign minister, his defense minister, and much communication, of course, between our military and their military to make sure that we are understanding one another well, that we are transparent about the support we're providing and the strategy they're pursuing. That continues today, and that will continue every day from here on out.
Share the sentiment of President Zelensky that a dialogue is only possible with another president and not Vladimir Putin?
I don't know the context of the statement, unfortunately, so I can't answer it in the characterization you've just provided it. What I will say is that President Biden believes that a diplomatic solution in Ukraine is possible, but it is only possible according to the basic terms of the UN Charter that everybody signed up to. That's what he said in his UN speech last week. He continues to believe that quite strongly, and in his conversations with President Zelensky, they've been of the same mind on that point.
Please follow up on Iran.
Question that on the pipeline, did I hear you correctly to say that the U.S. government has ruled out the involvement of any European allies, including Eastern European countries, some of whom are very angry about that pipeline and in the sabotage? And then,
We do not believe that this was the work of any NATO ally.
and then more broadly, Putin in his speech cast this as a kind of cultural struggle, with Russia standing for tradition and the U.S. and the West standing for Satanism, for attacking the family and traditional values and things like that. How do you answer that argument?
I mean, it's raving. The fact that he's using words like Satanism is, to me, precisely the kind of over-the-top rhetoric and ranting that you hear from someone who has no basis to justify what is a colonial and imperial land grab. And so rather than fill in any kind of logic or moral defense of what he has done, he has to resort to these kinds of absurd arguments. And I think that can be plain for the entire world to see. Yeah, and
Thank you so much.
this will be the last one, so that I can let you
Thank you, Jake. On another topic, what is your expectation for the election in Brazil this Sunday? What are you going to be watching for? And how fast is the White House going to recognize the result once it's announced?
I don't make predictions about American elections, so I promise you I will not make predictions about Brazilian elections or the elections of any other country. So, thank you, guys.
Question about Ukraine.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jake. We don't have much time because I know folks have to gather, but Colleen, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Karine, can you give us an update on the president's plans? Will he go to Florida? Will he go to Puerto Rico? And then also, do you have any idea how much money you'll have to request from Congress yet to replenish the disaster fund?
So I'll say this: the continuing resolution in Congress, as you all know, is voting. They're voting on this all today. So we'll help ensure that FEMA has the resources it needs to address immediate response and recovery needs, including those in Puerto Rico and also in Florida. So we will remain in close touch, obviously, with Congress on continuing to evaluate that. As far as what's currently happening, look, the president's been very clear. He wants to focus on what Florida needs, what Puerto Rico needs, and they both have the full force and the full support of the federal government, and we will continue to have close conversations with the officials on the ground to make sure that they have the people in Puerto Rico and the people in Florida have what they need. As you heard, he spoke to the South Carolina governor today, offering those same that same support. One of the things that I just want to reiterate, which is really important about what we have seen these last couple of days, more than a week, is if you think about what the president was able to do in Florida and what the president's going to be able to do in South Carolina, which is pre-position federal employees, responders on the ground in a way that we have not seen before. It is unprecedented what we're seeing, the type of coordination that we're seeing on the ground. And so that is because the president has made this a priority, and he wants to make sure that we are offering all of the support. Just to name a few, because this is, we think, important. This is the FEMA Urban Search and Rescue, the U.S. Coast Guard, the Department of Defense, DHS, the Department of the Interior, working hand in hand with the Florida National Guard and state and local responders. And these teams are doing the work day and night to make sure that they're rescuing folks on the ground, but also offering water, food, and generators as well.
When the president does go to Florida, whenever that might be, does he want to meet with Governor DeSantis personally?
So, I want to be very clear about this. This is not about politics, right? This is about the people of Florida and what they need. When we saw Surfside, the horrible catastrophic, building falling in Surfside and killing so many Floridians not too long ago, over a year ago, you saw Governor DeSantis and you saw this president sit side by side talking about how they were going to work together to make sure that that community got everything that they need. So this is not about politics. I don't have anything to share about a trip that the president's going to be making. He spoke for himself yesterday. It's something that he wants to do when it's appropriate in Florida. He does want to also go to Puerto Rico, and once we have an announcement to make, we surely will make that announcement.
Apparently a meeting today between the administration and oil executives. Could you tell us a little bit about that? What's that for?
For sure. So from what I understand, like as you stated, there's a meeting that happened with the Department of Energy with the oil companies. Don't have anything to share at this time as to how that meeting went or what was on the agenda. But certainly it is an important meeting as we look at continuing to keep those gas prices and oil prices down for the American people. As soon as I'm sure there'll be a readout and some more information to share to all of you. Go ahead.
Yesterday, President Biden said that Governor DeSantis, when they spoke, complimented him and praised the immediate response from the federal government. Is that a sentiment that the president returns? Does he think Governor DeSantis has handled the response to this well so far?
So I can't speak to the specifics of a private conversation. I can say that we gave a readout from our end about how the conversation went. Again, we don't want to make this about politics. We don't want to make this about red states versus blue states. This is about the American people that are families and everyday people who are on the ground who need the assistance, and they are going to continue to coordinate. They are going to continue to have conversations. They had, I believe, 3 conversations in just a week's time about what they can do to help the communities in Florida. But I don't want to get into politics here because this is not about that.
Right. I'm not asking about politics. I'm just asking if the president thinks that Governor DeSantis has done a good job.
I'm just not going to look. I haven't had that conversation with the president. What I can tell you is that they are working closely together. The FEMA administrator is down there currently with the governor. They are traveling the state together and looking at what is currently happening on the ground. I'm not going to get into particulars of who's doing a good job and who's doing could do a better job, I should say. Right now, we are working closely, hand in hand, with the officials on the ground. We have had multiple conversations, not just this president, but also the FEMA administrator. And you can see the fact that they've had conversations, the fact that the FEMA administrators on the ground, that this is a working relationship that is about the people of Florida. I'm not going to get into scorecards here. I don't think you got called.
Yeah, thanks. Just real quick, is the president will sign the CR today? Is that the idea now?
I don't have any. That's a very good question. I don't have any specifics on that. I know it takes some time. Like there's mechanics that need to be handled on the Congress side before a bill gets here. I don't have any specifics on when that gets signed. Clearly, he will sign it as soon as he's able to do that.
Okay, and is the White House still committed to an early October timeline for the application for student loans to go public? Yesterday there was an email that went out to some borrowers that said October generally. It didn't say early October. I'm wondering if the timeline slipped at all.
I do have a little bit. I don't have a specific date in October, but let me just, since you mentioned the email, yesterday we began the first of what will be regular updates to borrowers interested in debt relief. We shared information of what people can expect in the coming weeks around the program and process for applying. We shared the following. The application for debt relief will be available next month in October. No date set yet, but we will next month. It's this month. We are in October, right? Or tomorrow. Tomorrow we're in October. The application will be a short online form. Borrowers won't need to upload any documents or use their FSAID to support their application. The application will be available from October 2022 through December 2023. Once an individual submits a form, the Department of Education will review the application, determine if the individual is eligible for relief, and will work with their loan server to process the relief Our goal, as you all know, and we have said this, is to provide borrowers a seamless and simple experience working closely with the servicers who will actually process the relief. We will have additional information for borrowers in the upcoming days. Again, I know you're asking for a specific date, but that was what we provided in the email, and we should have more soon to share.
Really briefly, do we have any week ahead guidance for next week? I know that you don't want to say anything about the trip to Puerto Rico or Florida, but we typically
we usually put out our week aheads for those who follow their week aheads coming out of here on Sundays. If there is a trip next week, we certainly will share that with you. Don't have anything to announce at this time at the podium.
Just put a plug in for on Fridays as much as possible, trying to give some week ahead.
No, I understand. We've been here for 19 months, and we've always done the week aheads on Sundays. I hear you. I get it, but I'm just.
Jen used to do that.
Oh yeah, that's right. We just don't have. I hear what you're saying. We just don't have anything today for Friday to share. I get the question. I got it. But normally, yes, we do our week aheads that we send out on Sundays. And you're right. We used to do that on Fridays. I just don't have anything to share. And we will try and be more proactive in doing that on Fridays for sure. Go ahead, Jackie.
Thanks, Lorraine. A couple times this week, the president came after oil and gas companies. He threatened again to investigate instances of price gouging. But John Kirby said yesterday that he hasn't seen any evidence of that happening. And I remember the president first put out this call for the FTC to investigate possible price gouging in November of last year. So my question to you is, why does he keep throwing that out there? And does it have anything to do with the possibility that OPEC could announce a production cut next week and we might start to see prices come up? Is he trying to deflect away from?
So, as you know, we're not going to speak to OPEC Plus. We are clearly not a partner or part of OPEC Plus. So they are an independent entity, and we allow them to make their news and their announcements on their own. What we're saying is we're just making sure that while people are we are all dealing with a hurricane, that gas and oil companies don't take advantage of it. It's just a little bit of a.
All right. Well, I've had it, and apparently people are really upset with the colors. And I think it has something to do with Restream, and I'm waiting to see. Yeah, because this shirt looks a much redder version of, because it's not red at all. It's like yellow, kind of. Maybe orange. I don't know. But it's the pictures are messed up, and that's from the connection from this computer. It's somewhere. It's just screwing it up somewhere. So there's nothing I can do. But everyone's complaining about it. Not complaining. Everyone is talking about it. And then I realized nobody wants to watch this White House press conference anymore. And I don't blame you. So you're like talking about the colors. Yes, it's hurting my eyes. No, this. And I was like, why is nobody really like having conversations about what they're saying? And then I realized nobody cares about it. You know, it's kind of like me. Like I was sitting there playing on TikTok and Twitter. I'm not listening to what she had to say. So I was like, whatever. So that's going to do it for me for the day. I'm going to go home. I got to stop and pick up wine for the wife. There's a big car accident on southbound Interstate 81 at the Strasburg exit. So I get to take back roads all the way home because that's my exit. Yeah, very nice, right? So back road in it, just like she is right now. Luckily, see, I mean, that's how nice my wife is. She's like, just in case you didn't know, there's a major car accident on the interstate and it's backed up for miles. And I'm like, yeah, I already know. I'm in the media. We get push notifications. Come on. We get breaking news notifications. Duh. Anyway, I likely will do a show tomorrow because we need to generate some revenue. So as much as I don't want to, I'm going to be here all day anyway. Packaging orders, trying to get caught up on this stuff once and for all. Packaging all these K-Cups. Yes, we have K-Cups now. So far, we have the French roast done. Tomorrow, I'm going to try to tackle the French vanilla. I'm going to try to tackle the Flying High and 2 or 3 others. And then we'll sit there and go from there. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. And so we'll be live. You know what it probably is the computers need to be restarted. So I may restart, because this one hasn't been restarted since we got here, I think. And then this one I restart all the time, the main one, which is these 2 monitors. This computer, which has also got the camera, kind of does its own thing, you know? It does its own thing. But yeah, that's it. So I'll probably be live at some point tomorrow. Maybe we'll do a call-in show. I know, and I don't know what time. It may just be sporadic throughout the day. Otherwise, there's going to be music playing from now until 6 o'clock on Citizen Stringer TV, and then from 6 o'clock to 9 at Santilli, and then we're just going to have music going until I upload something, a little something for this weekend, which I'll do a push notification for all you peeps to know. But all of you guys try to enjoy your time, you know? Enjoy your weekend. Embrace your loved ones while you still can, because Biden is trying to kill us all in a nuclear war with Russia. That's the way to end it, right?